So tonight we're going to talk about late war Axis weapons. And late war means a lot of things to a lot of different folks. We'll start with something that's got a 1942 date on it because it's Italian. This is a Beretta model 1935. It's going to be chambered in 32, 7.65. The Beretta model 1934, which you see often, is chambered in what? 380. You'll see stamped on the side, 9mm, I heard it. Cordo, exactly, Cordo. That's pretty much the limit of my Italian. But besides grazie and a few things like that. But this one is a little bit unique. It's got some pitting on it. If you look at the rear tang, you remember when you look at these, you're looking at the marks on it. If you see RE, what does that mean? Army, right? If you see RA, that means Air Force. If you see a big anchor, that usually means Navy or a Vanderbilt fan, one of the two things. I can say that this year because they're winning. But this one's got a C and an M in a circle. And this took a little bit of research. When I found it, there's a guy up out of Boston, Mark, who you'll see on the P38 forum, but he's also big into Berettas. And he had an example. It's a Navy acceptance proof, but it's not the standard anchor. It's an odd bird. So the pitting on it you see, probably salt water. We look at these things and talk about them a little bit. You're going to see some things. I threw in a Nambu 14. Rick brought a nice one as well. This is one from October 42. As you go through the Pacific and look at the island campaigns, these things show up. Have any of y'all ever shot one of these Nambu 14s? And how would you rate it on a fun scale?
They're miserable to shoot.
Miserable to shoot. I don't know that I have actually shot this one because I believe I put it in my youngest child's hand at a range and he pulled the trigger once and it dumped the mag. He handed it back. This is when he was about 16. He handed it back to me and said, I don't think I want to shoot that ever again. And the springs are a bit weak. I cleaned it and put it away, but this one, yeah, it's a 42 production. These things came out of the islands and you'd find things all through the campaigns and get brought back. This one has a name stamped in the side, a former Army Air Corps pilot who became a United pilot. And after he died, our buddy who ended up moving to Oklahoma, he and I swapped this one. So anyways, as you go, things start to fare pretty poorly for the Japanese. This Arisaka dates back to, it was made probably in December of 44. It's a Series 24 made at the Kakura Arsenal. This one has an intact mum and a matching bolt. We don't know what that means completely, but a lot of folks will tell you what. It could have come from an arsenal, could have been a battlefield pickup. Some GI took his initials. I can almost imagine somebody laying this on his lap while he was sitting down, and you see these three initials, WRH. He wrote his initials in there. Why do you think he did that? Because the buddies
would steal it.
Right. That's just the way of the world in any army. But anyways, this one came back at the start of COVID, a couple of weeks or 2 or 3 weeks into COVID. People started selling stuff. Did y'all notice that? I walked into a gun shop here in town, and this was dusty. You could tell it had come out of a back of a closet or a garage, and they had a price of $205 on it. Granted, the guys at this little gun shop specialized in black plastic stuff, and I know there are people who appreciate that. It's just not me too much. I wiped the dust off the bolt and saw the number matched, and I paid him the $205 and didn't even haggle. It was like, all right, that's fine. As the war progressed, the Japanese became short on metal, and you see this bayonet. This bayonet was actually made at the Toyota Loom Works, Toyda. I drive their cars. That's pretty much the fleet of what I have now, but this is the Toyota, what we think of as Toyota Motor Company. What makes this bayonet unique is the scabbard. It's made of bamboo. Metal is such short supply, last-ditch effort. Where did it come from? It was probably picked up in Japan by occupation troops. The other Japanese thing we have here tonight is a different type. It's an Arisaka 99, but it doesn't look right. As you pick it up, you're going to notice it's heavier. It's got a big old anchor on the top. All right. This is a Japanese Type 99 Navy Special. These were made at the Navy yards at Yokosuka in 1945. The Navy couldn't get the regular Arisakas because they were all going to the Army. There were last-ditch ones you'll see with a different bolt than the one I showed you there that came out in 45. But what makes this really unique is, anybody know what it's made out of?
Ford axles, wouldn't it?
Well, Ford axles. It could be cast iron. So there's a barrel sleeve that's steel. The tip of the bolt, if you take a look at it, is steel. But the rest of this thing, receiver, the butt plate, the trigger guard, cast iron. The trigger itself, cast iron. Pick it up. Take a look at this. There are only 14,000 of these made. Some enterprising young GI got the deal of a lifetime by picking this up at the Navy Yard once the occupation troops went in. And you'll see pictures. First troops hit there in late August, early September, and broke into the arsenals there and took as much thing as they could pilfer. So for Japan, these are some interesting late war, and this is an odd bird, just to find this. And like I said, come pick it up, feel it, see how heavy it is. Man, I sure wouldn't want to shoot it. But that's just me. As you look at what happened in 44, I've got a P-38. This is an AC-44. This was made in early November of 1944. If you come up and look at it, you'll notice it's got a lot of machining on it, just like the CYQ pistol that you saw there, because Walther was busting everything they had to get these things out the door. This one's unique because as you look, the magazine has a P-38, it says V, and then there's a U under that. Anyone know what that U means? Unhardened metal. So they quit hardening the metal just to get these things out faster. So this one, made in early November, and it was captured by an American, and it ended up here, somewhere to the west. So this one, late 44. If you look at this rifle, I will tell you I have, well, many addictions, but one of them is if I find a nice sporterized rifle, I'll try to bring it back. Earlier this year, I found this rifle. You'll see a code that says AR-44. Now, that does not mean Armalite rifle. What does AR mean? So the Germans had codes. Early in the war, they used numbers. Each manufacturer had a number assigned, so we wouldn't, the people in the West that were fighting them would not know who or what plant it came from, in theory. So by this time, they flipped over in 1941 to letters. So when you see one that says BYF, who's that? Mauser. If you see one like you saw, AC on your rifle, Rick, Walther. We know that pretty strongly. This one that says AR, just to confuse you, also means Mauser. So Mauser, there were several different plants. This one, AR normally means Mauser Borgeshwald. Mauser Oberndorf is BYF. This receiver was made for Mauser Borgeshwald, but it was not assembled there. It got shipped over to Mauser Oberndorf. So when you look at the bottom of this rifle, the floor plate, you'll see a BYF code. This, anybody know what this is? Astra 300. We got a winner here. These came in two calibers. Anybody know the two calibers these came in? 32, which this one is. 380. Yeah, exactly. So these were made in Spain. These were not under occupation force, no forced labor, no slave labor, no conscripted folks. The Spanish made these. The Spanish were kind of friendly with the Germans. Why? Yeah.
They helped them in the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah. The Germans, you're spot on. The Germans showed up, they helped. But who liked these? And if you look at the features on this, there's no hammer exposed, right? Easy to carry. It's got a little safety. These are great guns. But if you're a pilot and you got to carry a gun up under your shoulder, you think you'd prefer something without a hammer to jab you? These were very much used by the Luftwaffe, the pilots. And in most cases in the German and the Japanese Army, how did officers acquire their handguns? Had to purchase them. They did. Pilots were a little bit of a rare exception because the Luftwaffe got guns and they would issue them to folks. This one is pretty darn pristine. It's really nice, and I don't know that it was carried. It might have sat in a desk. Who knows? I've got another pistol made in 1944. This is a Radom, just like the really cool one you saw over there with the capture history. This was made in July of 44. It's got brown grips. It's a second series, or actually third. It's got no takedown lever. That's gone. They were really trying to move production. Do y'all know where these were made and who designed them even?
Made in
Poland.
Poland.
If you remember, the Poles, they got their country back in 1919 at the end of World War I, right? And they were independent for how long? 20 years. 20 years they had independence till the Germans and the Russians came knocking from either end of their country. At the end of World War II, you think about it, they had groups of Poles that fought with the Russians and groups of Poles that fought with the British. They were pretty ferocious fighting folks. I mean, when you look at what they did in the West over in France, when you look at the Falaise pocket, the Poles are the ones that were the hammer that drove up against Patton's anvil that decimated the Germans that were in that pocket. And the Poles, they gave no quarter. They were tough as nails. And how did we reward them at the end of World War II? We gave them to Stalin, and they spent the next 40 years in Soviet occupation. I don't know that we did them any favors, but that deal was already cut. This is a Polish-designed pistol. If you find them pre-war, they'll have a big Polish eagle on the side. The Germans were desperate for firearms, right? So when they occupied Poland in 1939, you get a sign in front under new ownership, and they kept making these. So what pistol went to the German army? P-38s, always the P-38s. These went to the Army. These did not go to the SS. These did not go to the paratroopers. These did not go to the Kriegsmarine. These went to the Army. And who got issued P-38s? NCOs. You're spot on, brother. NCOs, machine gun teams. You might have been a private on a machine gun team with one as well, because in close quarters you had to have that. But the other branches of service fought over weapons. These Radams went to the paratroopers, the Fallschirmjäger, and also the SS. And this particular one came with a letter. Unfortunately, that letter is in a book that's now in a box in my garage because it's packed and ready to go. But the letter for this was written by a gentleman up in Loveland, Colorado. Not Loveland, but up Leadville. He captured this, he said, in a small arms action in March of 45 at a farmhouse near Dresden. And in the 1980s, around 1986, he gave it for Christmas one year to one of his buddies. Both he and his buddy are now dead. The son of the buddy brought it in to sell a month or two ago. And the story that goes with it is the small arms action came against an SS soldier. And it was just taken. Brown grips, which are a little bit later, or the earlier ones have black grips. And what's unique about these Radams, this one's not mine, but this is a friend who's here tonight who has it. This is a very late war one. The last 1,000 Radams, which are mostly in the K block, the second K block as it goes back through, had these wood grips, which are really, really cool. Phosphate finish, you notice you've gone from a blued finish to a phosphate finish. This one is a B block. Don't know where, it falls in at the very end. About 10 years ago, I found one of these in Buffalo, New York when I was on a work trip. Man, I couldn't convince the goobers there to ship it back here. But nonetheless, I will be digging through Eastern stores before long. And this is really interesting. One thing you'll notice about both these Radams, the proofs. You'll see a Eagle over 77, which is Radam in Poland. And then you're going to see an Eagle over, hang on, these eyes adjust, 623, which is going to be Steyr in Austria. I showed this to a friend the other day. We've got some friends here in town who are carpenters. They're from Poland. They're about my age, and they came over after the Iron Curtain fell in 1991 or 91. I showed him this. He had served in the Polish armed forces. You had to serve 2 years before communism fell. And he told me about a song in Poland about how they were fighting tanks with these VIS pistols in the Warsaw Uprising. He told me that, and it's kind of interesting. But these two are really fascinating. This one especially so, because it's phosphate finish, it's the wood grips. It's one of the very last 1,000 that were made. And it looks like we're okay because it's thundering and lightning out there pretty good. I feel like I'm back in the South. As you look at a couple other P-38s, this one, can you see the fact This is kind of a grayish green phosphate color on the slide in the frame. And the barrel is what color? Blue. This one says BYF 44, which to the regular person would think it means it's made by Mauser in 1944 is what the code is. But what's really happening here is this is a leftover part. This slide and frame were made in February of 45. Phosphate glued together, it's called a dual tone, because they were just trying to get these things out the door. This one is, it's all right. It's an E block, which is, production ran into about 3,000 on the F block before the plant, which is Mauser Oberndorf, got taken over, Americans, so we turned it over to the French, and they started making these things under French production. You'll see them all phosphated. It'll say SVW 45. A few of the SVW 45s went to Germany, but a bunch of them, and they'll have this funky metal grip you'll see on it. Were French occupation. So as we look at the P-38s, that covers, here's one that's an AC-45, Walther. This one was captured at the factory in a crate in early April of 45 as our troops advanced in. I've shown this one on a show and tell once before, but this, we know from serial numbers before and after it, this was in a crate. American troops went in, Zella-Mehlis, Germany. The troops, some of them that went in had to secure the Walther family because those forced laborers had bloody intent in their minds. They wanted to kill all the Walther family. Some of the troops secured them. Some of them started pocketing pistols. They came out and started pulling them out of crates, started pulling them off the production line, gave them to their friends in tanks, brought some home themselves. This is one of those. If you look at the mag, it's not blued. It's a phosphate wash, but it's got P38V with a U under it, which still is unhardened, which they started about 5 months before that, what you see in the earlier pistol. So cool pistols, these things show up from time to time. Out of that same factory, that same time, is this Walther PP. There's no roll mark on the slide. It doesn't say Walther, Zella-Mehlis, caliber. It just says a serial number and AC, AC being the code for Walther. So this one, 32, it's a 383 number. Right above this, they start getting mixed and matched, and this is the very end of production. Remember the old Mauser 1910, 1914 designs? The 1910 being the 25 cal, the 1914 being I think it was a 9mm, but it was a design that was just scaled up and down. The designers from that got hired away by CZ, and they ended up there, and this is one of the pistols they designed, the 24 and the 27. This one is all phosphate. I walked into a store where Sean works and saw this on a counter on a Saturday morning back March of this year, and I knew this was late. It was phosphate, and I looked at the serial number, and I did a quick web search while Sean wasn't looking, and it showed it was one of the last 1,500 of these built. So the factory, the Walther factory got taken by American troops. The Sauer factory, we'll talk about, got taken by American troops. The CZ factory got taken by a mob of angry Czechs who broke in, and 3 days later, Patton's troops ended up in the town. But this, one of the last 1,500 made there. They went on to make them for 2 or 3 more years. Under occupation, they went back to fancy blue. But this has got Waffen-Ops. This is a military pistol. It came at the bitter end. You'll see a couple of Sauer 38Hs here. This one, and these little 32 caliber pistols, y'all know who used these? German paratroops. But the paratroops, they didn't jump a lot after Crete, right? They didn't jump at all after Crete. They just became land guys. They used these. This one is January 45. There's no takedown lever, but it's Waffen-Opp military. They really streamlined production. The little safety is gone. It would normally be back here. These are cool little guns, internal hammer. This one has very, very brittle grips. The Germans didn't have anything but pure resin to use on the grips, no filler. The cellulose, it's all gone in January 45. And as you come up and look at this, you're gonna see chips in the grips, because these things are more brittle than my bones are heading towards. So this is not one you want to shoot with grips on it like this. One of our friends here tonight brought this one in. This is pretty cool. This is a Sauer 38H. No serial, no finish. It's bare metal. They've gotten rid of the safety. They've gotten rid of the cocker, decocker. This may be one of the very last ones to come out of the factory. And American troops took over the factory, and we had it for about 3 weeks before we had to give it to the Russians. Because remember, we had pre-divided what was going to go where. The Sire factory went to Russia. The folks that ran it escaped with their plans. You know, this is called Sauer and Son at this time. In 1961, they merged with a Swiss firm called SIG, and you know who they are today, right? They might make some guns for our Army. The Walther factory, we occupied it and had it for about 5 weeks, and then we gave it over to the Russians. They stripped all these factories, took all the machines and tooling, took them back east, and made guns of their own there. And you'll see things that look strangely similar as the years go on. Beretta, well, they still exist and claim to be the oldest firearms company owned by a family or the same group of people, I think, in the history of the world. This Mauser has never been shot. You'll see that the stock is really rough. There's chattering on the wood. This was picked up in the code. If you look at it closely, it says BCD4, which should mean what? Gustloff work is BCD. Gustloff work was formerly known as BSW, Berlin Suhler Works. And Berlin Suhler Works was formerly known as Simpson and Son. Simpson and Son was a company owned by Moses Simpson. And the name should tell you why the fate is that they changed names. They were Jewish owned. He made Lugers. He made all kinds of vehicle parts, many other things in Suhl. But when they found out he was Jewish around 1936, they took the company away from him, made it Berlin Suhler Works, and then by 1939, they become Gustloff Work. You'll see a code 337 on rifles, that's Gustloff Work, and then it becomes BCD. The 4 is just an abbreviated 44. So you would think, looking at this, that this is a BCD, Gustloff Work, made in 1944. But it's not. I found this in a local shop here in Denver some years ago, and it struck me that, man, this is ugly. The wood doesn't look very nice. Some idiots drilled 3 holes in the side. I posted my picture on a forum, a K98 forum, and told them about the other one, this one I had seen, and they said, you should go back and get it. And that was a Saturday when I had gotten it, all right? I travel a little bit for the government, my job. I look at drinking water systems. And so the problem was the next Monday morning, or Sunday afternoon, I'm on a plane to Milwaukee, which means this is still sitting in our gun shop, and there's yahoos like y'all that would want to get this too. And so I called my wife and said, can you go get this rifle? And my wife is very long suffering. She's put up with me for 35 years. And it took a little convincing to get her to go up there 10 minutes before the shop opened on that Monday morning. And sure enough, she secured the rifle. She bought it. They didn't know what it was worth. She talked them down to $351 out the door. This one's worth a wee bit more than that. This is an unfinished 3-hole Mauser. You know how sniper rifles went in World War II for the Germans? They started with the high turret, then they worked their way to the side mounts, the short side mount. This is an unfinished long side mount. And one would be tempted, a number of these were captured at the factory when it fell in the spring of 45. You'll notice a phosphate finish on the barrel, some blued parts on the bands. She's all matching down to every bit of the inner. These are great rifles. You'll notice the safety doesn't look like a regular Mauser safety. It looks like a key. So this is so you can clear it up under the scope. There, sorry about that, but you can see how this works. Don't tell me. Shoot, you can dechamber around in full safe, just like a Mauser. But come look at this, and come look at the Waffenop on this little safety. Come up, take a look, ask questions, but come definitely take a look and feel this cast iron Arisaka. That's neat. Questions?
I read somewhere that the stocks are often made of 2 pieces for the Japanese rifle because of a lack of wood, or is that?
You're exactly right. So wood was in short supply in Japan. They had Korea, they had Manchuria. There's a lot of trees in Korea, I've been there. But what you'll see here, and it's easier to see on this one because it's starting to separate, they would make the stock, this piece down to here, and then the handguard, and then they would attach this lower part. And the whole butt plate would hold it together the way it was designed. This one has dried out in our fine climate here in Colorado, and it started to separate just a wee bit. I haven't touched it or tried to mess with it because that's just where it is. You'll see that these Navy rifles were made by the same companies that made the training rifles, the little smaller trainers that you'll see. If you ever come across an Arisaka that's a training rifle, just leave it as a display piece, right? But this stock is single piece, and it was made by at the Navy yards there, but it's a little bit smaller, and you'll see how it works. Man, this would have been heavy to carry around. The Germans had a problem with wood too. Remember, the early Mausers were solid walnut. What you're seeing here is a laminate, and you look at the bottom, you'll see the different layers that are all glued together. Red glue on both of these that are done. You'll see white glue ones as well. The white glue didn't hold up quite as well as the red. Thanks for letting me talk tonight, and thanks for those of you who shared some stuff up here that's not mine. Thanks for doing that too.
In keeping with the talk tonight, this is a G43. It's an AC, so it's a Walther gun. It's dated 44, so I don't know if that counts as a late war. So I've got this if anybody needs an example of something like that. Here's a P38 BYF Mauser 44 with its holster, marked P38 on the back, maker's name, and 1943 for this holster. So that's there if you want to look at it. I also have a 1936 or 37 Japanese Type 14, if anybody wants to look at that as well.
Nickel plates or chromes are guns. GIs, to bring them back. Patton was pretty well known for having chrome-plated guns, whether a Colt or whatever he's got. So this is a rather nice Radom of the first variation, and so there's 3 different variations of them. Some of them had a slot in the back, and I'll rely on Dave to give a background to that. But 380,000 were produced during the Nazi period. So they're all going to have lots of numbers, lots of proof marks, and all that kind of thing. But the point I'm making is that the GI brought this back. This actually came with bring back papers as well. And the guy had a piece of tape here with his name, rank, and serial number on it. It hadn't come off of the holster. So nice to have the holster, nice to have a ring. This is a little unusual. Same thing, original holster, 2 magazines, a rig. I didn't have to put a tie in this one, I was going to. This is an unusual gun, it's called a VZ or CZ38. I'll just leave it undone. It was 380, kind of a big gun for a 380 caliber, but very unusual. In fact, it's also double action only. So these are mostly police guns. It kind of has a police style holster. Again, this is actually the guy's got his name on the back of the holster instead of the front. Also with bringback papers.
This is an 1888 Marlin. It's the second and last top ejecting Marlin that was made. This one's in 3840. It's in good shape. They're not often found with very much gluing on them. 24-inch barrel, and I just wanted to fill in between the top ejecting and the side ejecting. There's argument, I've heard both stories, that they changed because Winchester threatened them, but I don't know. Marlin never seems to have been very respectful of Winchester, so I don't know if that's true. So that's what that is.